This episode of What the Tech is brought to you by Away. Away makes first-class luggage at coach prices that allows you to charge your phone on the go. For $20 off your order, go to awaytravel.com/Andrew and use the promo code Andrew. That's awaytravel.com/Andrew. Casper, an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the price, because everyone deserves a great night's sleep. Get $50 off a select mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/Andrew and enter promo code Andrew at checkout.
What's the tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew here, and of course I'm joined by the one, the only Mr. Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good. Andrew,
hey,
are you doing this podcast with an Apple earbud thing?
I am.
Is that what I see sticking out of the other side of your head?
That's exactly what you see. No, I'm not using the mic on this.
Okay.
Or am I? John, am I using the mic on this or the mic on this?
It sounds good. It sounds good. Oh, wait a minute. Do that again.
Hold on.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, thank God. No, I can't find my headphones, and they made it so confusing, right? Because now you have the new ones that don't work on a Mac. You can't plug in the new Apple headphones because, God forbid, they make life easy.
They are priceless. Yep.
So now I had to find a pair of headphones because I left them at home. I upgraded the lighting in this office, so it looks like I'm, glowing from every corner at this point here. But I'm in my work. Yeah, I'm in my work office. Little by little, this is going to become my studio. I could see it happening already. But sure. How are you, Paul?
Pretty good. Kind of a stressful couple of days here because we're traveling tomorrow, and
you're going to Sweden.
Yeah, a lot of last minute things that have to get done.
So you're going to Sweden, and Sweden is coming to me today because my Volvo is being delivered to my house today.
Walked in the house this morning. It's hard, or not this morning, from the dentist a few minutes ago, and it's hard for me to express how impossible it is that I knew this, but I'll just go out and say it. My daughter's watching TV. There's a dance number occurring in this movie, and I said to her, "Are you watching Mamma Mia?" And she goes, "Yeah." And then she said, "How do you know that?"
It's Mamma Mia.
I can't explain it, but I knew what it was.
A lot to talk about today. I had a couple questions for Paul and a couple observations that I've discovered. I really got into over the weekend. Jess was away, so I had all the time in the world to just be a total geek and a total nerd, and I started fiddling with my Raspberry Pi finally. That actually sounds terrible. If you think about what I just said.
Don't fiddle with that.
My wife was away. My wife was away for the weekend, and I was fiddling with my Raspberry Pi. Geez,
look,
I'm losing my mind here.
You're a human being. It's okay.
You're a human being. We all have weaknesses. And I'm absolutely in love with the fact that this thing is so customizable. And I'm making like this crazy arcade cabinet now. I got into this. I'm really into retro gaming. This is my thing now, Paul. Like, we've done What the Tech forever. My next thing is retro gaming. This is going to be my 40s. It's all going to be about retro gaming.
Okay.
Just buckle up. So I want to talk about
listen, I might be right next to you just doing like retro computing. I've sort of, been suffering from that old guy thing where it's like everything that we make today sucks. I want things to be like they used to be.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. All I want every day is a 3-inch thick IBM ThinkPad. That's all I want.
I'm going to start writing programs in Amiga Basic. I'm going to be one of those guys.
I know it's going to happen one day. We do have a lot to talk about, obviously. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the new Macs. A couple things on the Windows side I want to touch on. It's the middle of the summer, and everybody's traveling. So this is actually a perfect time to talk about our great sponsor, and that's Away. I don't know if you know this, Paul, but I absolutely love traveling. And I'm about to go to Barbados in 2 weeks. And one of the
Nice.
things, so a couple months ago, actually about a year and a half ago, Away sent me this carry-on, a little carry-on with a battery pack, so I could plug in my laptop, plug in my phone, and it was absolutely amazing. I hate to travel with actual luggage. I only take my carry-on, and this thing has been amazing. Away makes affordable, high-quality suitcases that charge your phone. You could charge your laptop. You could charge all your devices. And by cutting out the middleman, Away is able to offer the perfect luggage made by high-quality material at a much, much lower price. They come in 10 different colors, 5 different sizes, a carry-on, a bigger carry-on. I like the regular size carry-on, actually. That's absolutely my favorite. They also make a kid's carry-on, a medium bag, a large bag. And he has a great offer. You get $20 off your purchase. If you go to awaytravel.com/Andrew and you put in the offer code Andrew at checkout, that's awaytravel.com/Andrew, and you can put the promo code Andrew to get $20 off your order. And these guys know it's not expensive. And these things take a beating. I take mine whenever I got to do like a video thing. Like I actually have mine in the other room right now. I'm helping a friend out at the 7 Line. Darren from the 7 Line is doing a live broadcast from Playwrights Tavern today. And I just brought a couple things audio equipment wise. And I'm going to head over there and I'm going to just take my Away travel bag, plug in my phone, charge it while I'm walking there, and produce a show and just take it home. It's super easy. Also, 100-day risk-free trial with these suitcases. Awaytravel.com/Andrew. Enter the promo code Andrew at checkout. Got $20 off your order. I want to thank Away for supporting the show. Let's talk about these new MacBooks, Paul. The MacBook Pro.
Yep.
What do you think of the third refresh to this new body?
Yeah. You know, this thing that they're doing is very reminiscent of what happened with the iPhone after they released the iPhone 4, which is that they kept revving it to try to fix a problem. In that case, it was the antenna primarily, although the original iPhone 4 had all kinds of problems. But the antenna endures, you know. They released different versions of the iPhone 4, including the special one they did for Verizon back before they had the universal support for carriers. They, of course, they later revved it with the 4S. 5C, the 5S. I think they finally got it right with the iPhone 6. Like 3 years later.
Yeah.
Of course, they also were changing the body over this time as well. Like the iPhone 5S, I think it was the tall one and so forth. But anyway, yeah. So we're doing it again, and this, this is Apple. We can't admit there's a problem. Apple, multiple class action lawsuits. Later, we're going to pretend that we, improved the keyboard to make it quieter, when in fact what we really did was improve the keyboard to address the elephant in the room, which is the crazy circumstance where even a speck of dust could bring down this expensive computer.
Well, two problems, right? There's 2 problems here.
Mm-hmm.
1, a speck of dust that could ruin your keyboard, and 2, the sound of this clickety clacky giant keyboard. So I don't have any gating here. Okay, I'm just using a USB mic, plugging it in. Yep. So and I've done this test before. I'm not going to move the mic closer to me, and you tell me if you hear it. Okay. You hear any of that?
I mean,
okay,
I can kind of hear it just barely. Yeah.
It's
well, I mean, having used
loud.
One of these things, it's a really loud clack, and it's the type of sound that kind of hits you viscerally, like you can kind of feel it in addition to hearing it. And it hurts somewhere in the back of your, where your hearing connects to your brain or whatever it is.
Taste it, Paul. I could taste it.
Yeah, right. Like a metal taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, when I first got it, and I'm going to sound really stupid here, I thought the sound was put in artificially, and there was like a button that I could turn it off.
It was like a mechanical keyboard sound coming through the speakers.
Yeah. You could do that with the keyboard, actually, like with the touch. Like I thought it's like a manufactured sound that it's making, and there's a way to like kind of soften this. So they've come up with a solution for this.
Well, is it a solution?
I don't know.
By all accounts,
a thin piece of film on the bottom.
Yeah. So I feel like we had talked about this a little while ago. There was a thing about like replacement keyboards for people with a 2017 MacBook Pro, where the replacement keys had some sort of a little damper, like an O-ring kind of thing. That was supposed, some kind of a difference or whatever. And of course, in this new version, the 3rd gen, they've added the some kind of a condom looking thing or whatever it is over the butterfly mechanism.
The Apple condom.
Yeah. We'll see. I think about this stuff a lot because I get a lot of complaints from people because of what I do for a living. There is an amplification effect, I think, to the internet. People tend to complain more than they praise, and then with the internet and the anonymity, it's that much easier. And so, it seems to me like this is an endemic problem. Apple says it's a small minority of people, and the truth is maybe somewhere in the middle. But this is another.
For what? Which the small minority
for the keyboard that have actually experienced a keyboard being destroyed by a speck of dust.
I mean, I have to tell you, my wife's 13-inch has had the keyboard replaced twice.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like anecdotally, I've heard about this a lot, and that's the thing. So I don't know. I think things are going to be interesting in the next 6 to 9 months because Consumer Reports at some point is going to do their little laptop review special, and we'll see if anybody has complained to them about it, right? It seems like if this is happening, they should get a bunch of complaints, but I have my theories about how and why that doesn't happen, but whatever. Anyway, I'm not against this kind of thing. It's unusual for Apple, a company that often lets Macs in particular languish for years, to have upgraded this system 3 years in a row, right? Apple doesn't release a new MacBook Pro every single year, except now they have 3 years in a row. That's what you need to know. That tells you that there is a problem. They're solving a problem. So it's kind of interesting. They were obviously overdue going toward the 8th generation, quad core and actually 6 core in their case, CPUs. They achieved that finally. I think that's fine. I don't have any problem with it. I still look at the MacBook Pro and I think to myself, they're so expensive, like crazy, stupid expensive.
Yeah. I think it's like the top spec, that one is almost $7,000, right?
Yeah, but just looking at the base cost of this new version, with the 3rd gen keyboard, is like $2,300 for a 13-inch.
So here's how it works. So they updated the Intel chip, and it's a much better chipset. It's the 8th generation, and it's a 6-core and quad-core processor. So
this came out last summer, by the way.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
They came out
so on the Mac side, only the 15-inch MacBook Pro has the ability to be a quad core. The 13-inch is always it's an i7 or an i5, but it's a dual core i7 i5. It's not a quad core.
No, actually, that's not. Wait, hold on. Are you sure about
that?
Because I think
previous gen.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yep.
Yeah. Previous gen, and it was always a problem. And I always said, the 13-inch MacBook form factor is great because it's a nice size, but the 15-inch is gigantic. It's really. Yeah. I have a 15-inch and a 13-inch. My older.
They really need They need a 14-inch is what they need.
They definitely need, and I think they'll get there with the 13-inch. Really, the bezel's getting thinner. The 15. Maybe they'll. I don't know. The reality is the 15-inch one is not really a laptop to move around a lot. It's really big and heavy. This thing.
Yeah.
But the reason why a lot of people gravitate towards it, especially if you are in editing in any way, is because it's actually a quad core, not a dual core. Now, the new ones, the 13-inch, it's a quad core.
Well, if you get the touch bar version, they're still selling the non-touch bar version is the one from last year.
Paul, why would you not get a touch bar version?
Well, but actually, the answer is in the question, Andrew. Yeah. It has a touch bar. This is Apple. They're not going to give their own customers the choices that they should be able to get, like buy a 15-inch version without the touch bar. I think they would be not surprised to discover a lot of people would choose that version.
Yeah. But this is interesting here, and I'll tell you what I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Apple has gotten a lot of slack from the I guess from its user base, especially with people that are looking for a Mac Pro. The last Mac Pro was a total freaking dud. The iMac Pro is unattainable for most because it's so expensive. What I think this is kind of like a bargaining tool that they're using with their client, with their base. And I'll tell you why. This, if you get the 6-core version of this thing and you get an eGPU and you plug it into this thing, there is no reason to get a Mac Pro.
Right.
You essentially the device makes no sense anymore.
I mean, I could say that about half of their lineup. You know, I feel like there's a reckoning coming that this is going to be cleaned up over time. No, I mean, like they have too many different things that are kind of at different places, and it's kind of weird. Like if you look just at Macs, you know, they've got new and old MacBook Pros. They have an ancient MacBook Air. They have a last generation MacBook. There's a suspicion or rumor that the MacBook is going to be updated this fall with whatever new generation terrible Y series chip is out, and that maybe the Mac Air will be replaced with a 13-inch version of that. And fine, like that's fine, because obviously they need a 13-inch device that costs less than whatever the MacBook Pro costs.
Yeah.
What's the base price of that thing? It's expensive. $1,600 or something.
14 for for which one? 13-inch?
For the garbage one. Yeah, just the 13. No, like 13-inch. The base price is $1,300.
I'll tell you
the
right
base
now,
price of the Touch Bar version is $1,800. So they need something that's like in the $999, kind of thing. And they'll get there. I have no doubt about it. But the iMac, and the iMac is, whatever. The iMac Pro, like you said, is unobtainable. The Mac Pro is in limbo. Like it's just the whole thing is such a mishmash of new and Mac Mini, which is MacBook Air, even worse than MacBook Air as far as how long it's been since it's been
okay,
updated.
You got the MacBook. The MacBook is their, showpiece because it's beautiful. And I don't think anybody could disagree that that's a beautiful, beautiful device. It's just performance-wise, it's not there. You have the MacBook Air, which is dead, right? Essentially. You got the MacBook Pro. You got the iMac Pro, Mac Pro.
By the way, the MacBook Air is probably their best seller. It's probably the best-selling Mac.
Yes, because it's the cheapest, $99, $9.99.
But that's what they need is a modern replacement for that, and that would really help them a lot because it would just cause a lot of upgrades. It would be another great seller.
Yeah. You know what I was curious? Are we going to see this on the Microsoft side with more devices? Right now with that Surface Go and the and their whole entire Surface lineup. When do we start seeing? I guess they're almost there now, but
yeah, I mean, so
do we get a little Surface, mini computer? Is that are we going to see that?
I think Microsoft understands that the future of this stuff is portable. It's not a desk, obviously they have the special case, Surface Studio, $3,000, whatever. That thing is a nightmare of old components right now as well. But until the Surface Go, Microsoft lined up nicely with the Mac lineup, with the exception of the high end, the really high end. Like there are no crazy expensive. You just described a $7,000 MacBook Pro. Like they don't have something like that on the Surface side, unless you want to include Surface Hub, which is not a computer. Let's see what the most expensive. They just don't match up. But you know what? It makes sense for Apple to shift lower. I'm sorry, for Microsoft to shift lower. So the Surface Go makes sense. It makes sense for Apple to shift higher because they're a luxury brand. It's the way it is. It's fine. And so I think the way things are right now makes sense. And if you want to compare like products that kind of line up together, the Surface laptop with the MacBook Air, or the Surface Book 2 with the MacBook Pro. We're probably never going to see a Core i9 version of Surface Book 3 or whatever. Like, I don't think we're going to see that.
So the most expensive,
but it's okay. Like
laptop, the most expensive, $2,699.
Yeah, and so that's probably like a 15-inch Surface Book 2 that's maxed out with 16 gigs of RAM, 512 or 1 terabyte of storage, and then that one has the higher end NVIDIA graphics processing in it. So, it's what you said, $2,600.
That was a Surface laptop. I could do the Surface Book 2 now.
No, do Surface Book 2. That's going to go higher.
15-inch, 16 with 1 terabyte. Can I do 1 terabyte? Yeah. $3,299.
$3,299. So If you look at it, and that's a 15-inch, I would assume.
15-inch NVIDIA. It's the highest i7, 16
Is
gigs
it
of
30?
RAM, 1 TB.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, that's roughly equivalent. A MacBook Pro 15-inch with 32 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage. I'm sorry, you said 16 gigs RAM.
16 gigs of RAM, and I did
Yeah.
1 TB of storage.
1 TB is to $3,200.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how these things match up. The processors are probably roughly comparable, although with the Apple, no, that's not true. Apple has a better processor. It's a 6-core Intel Core i7. You can get a Core i9 for $300 more.
So let's see.
I don't know how the graphics line up.
So let's go to 15-inch MacBook Pro. We could do the quad core. No, they're only, wow, interesting. I can't even pick a quad core. I can only do a 6-core.
Yeah, 6-core.
Touch bar and Touch ID. Okay, so 512. Okay, so this is pretty comparable. 16 gigs of RAM, 512 storage. It's the 6-core 8th generation i7 with 512 SSD, $27.99.
But the difference is, with the Apple, you can go up to a Core i9. You can now go up to 32 gigs, which, remember, for the previous 2 gens was kind of a sore spot for some people. And you can go up to an insane, like 4 terabytes, I think it is, of SSD storage. That's, I think that speaks to the market that Apple is kind of targeting with this device, right? Which is kind of the high-end content creation market. Like, it's a pro product. I could picture Microsoft wanting to compete in that arena. I mean, obviously the Surface Book 2 is kind of there. But it just, I feel like Apple, like I said, Apple shifts a little higher, with their whole lineup. The whole thing shifts over to the high end. And Microsoft's, it's kind of shifted back to where it has always been, except for the past generation, which is just a little bit lower. They have high-end products, obviously.
You know what I was thinking? About 2 years ago when that MacBook came out, the conversation was fanless CPUs. The next 2-3 years, we're going to see more and more of these fanless CPUs, and you're going to be able to do everything you could now on a fanless CPU. It seems like a lot of the OEMs have kind of taken a step back from that being the future. Does it have to do with the fact that Intel kind of flubbed their lineup with their chipset, with the size of the with the chips?
Actually, so whatever it's worth, I want to say historically it hasn't been that long, but for a long time, PC makers to go fanless there's been a variety of chips, like the Atom-based chips, Celeron-based chips, and then we had this Core M thing, which started out as garbage and then evolved to garbage. It's always been garbage. It's terrible, and it's so garbage that they've kind of gotten rid of the brand, and they're starting to call these things Core i something, and it's like a Y series. It's just a Core M chip. It's garbage. So it's been garbage on various PCs. HP did an Elite. I think the original version of the Elite X2 was a Core M based blah, 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 whatever. It was garbage. Not their fault. It was a beautiful machine. It's just the processing was terrible. That's what Apple's using in the MacBook. And then with this next version, they're going to use whatever the Y series that's coming out this fall is. Who cares? The interesting thing to me, though, is in the Surface Pro line only, with Surface Pro 4, if you bought the base version of that product, it was fanless, so there was no there was no sound. It was silent, but it was a Core M something. I don't remember anymore. It doesn't matter. With the new version of Surface Pro, which came out last year, you can get the base product and the mid-level Core i5 product fanless. The new Surface Go, which is Pentium based, it's kind of back to the garbage, but is also fanless and silent. And it's possible to do that. Obviously, to handle the thermals and everything, you have to kind of ratchet the chip down. It's not going to have the same, the thing would explode in your hands if it was running full speed. But it's an interesting compromise, right? If you think about like smartphones, like one of the things that OnePlus does with their phones is they have the same chip as everyone else, but they try to optimize things a little bit differently to give you both the perception and kind of the reality of faster speeds when you need them the most. So, for example, when you're launching an app, if that app comes up faster, it's always going to run at the same speed, which is normal. But if you can get it to come up like a second faster than another otherwise identical phone, that is faster to people. That kind of thing matters. And I think it's possible with these kind of fanless silent Core i5 systems. I don't know of a lot of them, but like the Surface Pro. If this thing is done correctly, and I'm not saying that it is, but it seems like they should be able to do this. You could have it do little bursts, of speed when you're launching things, and then you kind of settle into the usage of an application, whatever it might be, and it kind of goes back to its normal. Yeah, there's no reason that can't work. But yeah, we still don't see a lot of it,
No, and I'm surprised because that's really the only moving part left on these computers, on these laptops, is a fan.
Yeah, and it's amazing how that impacts battery life too.
Oh,
but you kind of need it. Yeah. So Surface Go, obviously, that was one of the big deals. It's fanless, silent, whatever. But thinking about this Apple stuff again, if Apple does release a 13-inch version of the MacBook, it would be very interesting to me, and I think to a lot of other people, if they still had the Y series, whatever chips, but for a couple $100, you could upgrade to a Core i5 and have it, it would be detuned a bit, but still be fanless and silent. I think a lot of people would love to have that laptop.
Listen, I would it be faster than a 2-year-old or 3-year-old MacBook Air?
Yeah, see, that's the key. It would kind of have to be.
It would have to be.
The way, well, for it to make sense, right? Well, maybe not. You know what? Honestly, the MacBook Air today performs wonderfully. I have one that's probably 4 or 5 years old, whatever it is. It still works great. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. Now, imagine that level of performance with a high DPI screen. First of all, it's the biggest problem with the MacBook Air, and then fanless and silent.
Yeah,
you don't even have to. It doesn't have to technically be faster. Those people are not doing Photoshop or video editing or whatever. They're just running Word in a web browser, and they're doing email and normal stuff. That use case is humongous. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about this and how the market is shifting, obviously, and obviously battery life is a huge part of this. I have to tell you, the battery life on this MacBook that I had, the 15-inch, is tremendous. But it's a giant laptop, it's a giant battery. Same thing with the HP that I have. So it has to be a balance, and there has to be a reason why it doesn't. There has to be a reason why we haven't seen a lot of the manufacturers go that direction with most of it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm surprised, especially with these lower end devices. I mean, I'm talking those entry level, $400, $500. I would imagine there'd be a lot more of this.
I think what happens is they experiment, each of them, with 1 or 2 models. They're trying things. HP is one of the first PC makers to also try with the Qualcomm chips, and that's not really working out. The first gen of those chips just isn't great for PCs. I think future gens will improve it, and we'll see if that makes sense. But HP, like I use the HP example of the previous gen X2. That's an example. They try these things. They talk to customers. What do you need? We're going to give you this thing. It's like a tablet, and you can add a keyboard cover, and it becomes a computer. What matters more? If it was a little slower, but the battery life was really good, and it was silent and fanless, and you could hold the thing and it wouldn't get hot. Is that more important? And I think a lot of people say yes. And then they make it, and then the people who buy them are like, God, this thing's really slow. Because that's what we do. We complain.
Priorities change, right? And this is something that we always talk about, depending on what your current situation is. For me, it was performance. I want the best performance. I'm always plugged in. Battery life wasn't that big of a concern for me. Now, for me, it's mobility. I want this light. I want this quick. I want better battery life. I'll give up a little bit on performance so I could have the extended, day out of this thing.
But you need the compromise. To me, has always been too extreme in one direction. Like when I look at something like the Qualcomm-based HP Elite X2, it's a beautiful machine. It's beautiful. I would give up half that battery life. It's over 20 hours of battery life just to have it be like 25% faster. It's too far on the curve in one direction. The compromise to me has never been correct. It's never been the right place for a lot of devices. It's tough because, it's the cheapest thing in the world to say, but like every product design is some compromise. You make this beautiful machine maybe, but then you can't jam all the things inside of it you need for it to actually work. So you kind of contort the design a little bit. It's not as beautiful looking, but maybe it works better, whatever. Like, how do you hit the right point? It's different. Some products do a really good job of that. Some products are so well designed that you live with their various, functional compromises because you just love the way the thing looks. Sometimes you put up with a piece of junk because it works really well, from a design standpoint.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious as to the trends. Now, have you heard how the pre-orders for the Surface Go are going? I mean,
No.
is there any buzz around this? Is there any expectations for back to school, especially that I can see already from their branding and what I'm seeing is that they're really targeting the back to school. I mean, that's going to be a major focus. You go to Microsoft's website, in their store, that's the first thing that you can see right now.
I don't think that the Surface Go or any Surface is ever going to be like a MacBook Air level of success. And they don't really have to do that. They sell whatever number, some single digit millions of computers per year. Obviously, what they're trying to do is expand the brand to a wider audience. Going lower price makes total sense. I don't know why they ever left that audience.
Or the perception of lower priced, right? Because you're still going to need to get the type cover.
No, it's still lower price compared to what they were selling at before. In other words, previously or as of today, the cheapest Surface you can get that's any good is $1,000, right? I know their sales sometimes are $800, but realistically speaking, if you spend $1,000, you're going to get a really nice, or decent. Basically anyone normal could use this thing. It's fine.
Yeah.
So now you bring that down to sub $700 or $700 ish, and that's important. Apple realizes this too. They never wanted to play in the netbook market. They have other things for people who can only spend $500 like iPads, but that's Apple. Apple has their own strategy. Microsoft expanding the market for their devices is not a hard computer science problem. It's easy. Just lower the price. They can't lower the price on the existing devices because this is the cost of those things to them. So they can't. So this is how they do it. They make a smaller, cheaper device, and I think it's going to work great for them. I hope what this does is inspire other PC makers to up the quality on their lower end products, because if you look at what HP and Dell and Lenovo and Asus and Acer and whoever else does in the $500 ish range, you're not going to see a lot of high end materials being used. Even that Elite X2 that I was talking about, which by the way is close to $1,000, doesn't have like a high quality from a material standpoint type cover. It has like a polyurethane, whatever. It's plastic. It's basically plastic. And it's fine. I mean, it's fine. But Microsoft, by bringing the quality of their premium devices down, I think it's going to have an impact. In the same way that people on the Apple side just selling a MacBook, for under $1,000, even though it doesn't have enough RAM and the processor's junk and whatever, it's too tiny for a lot of people. It's the quality of that hardware that you want. Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah, it's like you said, the hardware that you want. I want to continue this obviously, and I want to talk about a hardware that I don't want. That's a little teaser here for all of you before we continue, because why are we going to get a Bixby, smart device? I don't know where to begin with
Samsung.
Because Samsung. But before we do, I want to talk about our great sponsor and friend of the show, a friend of mine and a friend of Paul's, and that's Casper. Get $50 towards select mattresses by going to casper.com/Andrew and entering the promo code Andrew when you check out. You save an additional $50 towards a select mattress purchase. I have to tell you, their mattress lineup is getting better and better. They started off with one mattress. Now they have 3 on there. They have dog beds. They got duvet covers. They got pillows. They got foundations for the bed. So it's a one-stop shop, essentially. When you're buying a new bed or a new mattress, this is the place to go. I absolutely love them. I've been using my Casper mattress for years. Casper mattresses are made in the USA, and you get a risk-free 100-day trial. Because listen, you spend a huge portion of your life sleeping on a mattress. Shouldn't you give it a couple days before you determine if this is for you? It's a long commitment. I'm getting looked at while I'm doing this because I've been pushing Casper mattresses in my office for about a year now. I've convinced 4 people already to buy a Casper mattress. I'm the greatest spokesperson for offices for Casper. I'm just going to go door to door selling Casper mattresses to offices. Get $50 towards a select mattress purchase by going to casper.com/Andrew and using the promo code Andrew at checkout. 100-night sleep trial. It's very important that you try it out, and that's why Casper will give you 100 nights to try it out. Casper.com/Andrew. Use the promo code Andrew at checkout. I want to thank Casper for supporting the show. I get choked up when I talk about Casper mattresses, Paul. I get very excited here. Talking about things that I don't want.
Actually, before we do that, let me mention my own Casper thing, because as I reported last week, there's been like a decided improvement in my sleep, and that has actually continued.
Oh, has it really?
I still have a couple of because of this trip and like how stressful it is. At least twice this week, I've kind of just woken up in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what went wrong in my life. But it's not related to the mattress; it's just related to the.
Imagine how worse it would be if you didn't have a Casper.
Yeah, and I showed it to my wife because you could see it in the Fitbit app, because it has little blue and red lines when your sleep is interrupted, and the number of those has gone down dramatically in the past 2 weeks compared to it's been a nice improvement.
That's actually that should have been in the live read. It's a live testimonial from Paul.
I could change your life. I'm living proof.
I'm living proof.
I sleep terribly, and this has helped. That's all. I mean, it hasn't like solved my problem. It's not like I've been cured of sleep apnea or something, but I mean, it's made like a huge difference.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's noticeable. Yeah,
that's amazing. Talking about things that we don't want. Who's going to buy this Bixby speaker, and why?
Aside from the people in the family that runs Samsung, I don't know. There's obviously a battle going on for the future here, and Samsung is determined to play a major role in it. And they just, it's like they feel obligated to do this. The world does not need another smart assistant or digital assistant, and they're giving us one. And they're improving it. I mean, I'm sure it's like Apple Maps. Like, there'll be some Samsung guy out there who's like, I don't think you understand. Like, it's gotten way better than it was when they first launched it last year. Yeah, that's how technology works. I get it, but the way that Microsoft. Hello.
Hello.
Let me retrench here. The way that Google and Amazon especially have just turned up the speed on the improvements on their own assistants. This is a 2-horse game. There is no other outcome to this. Yeah. Even something like Siri, which astonishingly has pretty high usage, again, a wonderful Apple user base, is terrible, and it's hard to make these things better. It's like the Microsoft in the phone market. Like, we're already so far behind. Like, how do we solve this problem? Guys, there may not be a solution to this problem. You may not be able to make it good enough. And I cannot look. People in the Apple ecosystem, I bought a HomePod. I get it. It's never going to work with anything else. That I actually kind of understand. I don't respect it, but I get it. Someone buying like a Bixby speaker, like what circle of hell do you live in where you think that makes any sense? Like no, that's ridiculous. I don't care how far up Samsung's behind you are.
Where I'm
Home
hear,
speaker.
This is what you're gonna hear. And I'm gonna play devil's advocate that the Bixby speaker will integrate better.
With what? With garbage?
They're so desperate for you to use Bixby on
they
my
could
phone.
Pay me to use it.
So here's an example. You get like points if you use it well. Like I'm at level 1 because I never use my Bixby. I don't know if you can see the focus there.
You know what? I hate this. I don't. So this kind of thing is what you need, but it's everything you need to know. It's like the Microsoft Rewards thing.
I'll tell you, it's a little bit useful.
Of course, it's useful.
A little bit, because it tells me how many steps I took. It tells me my heart rate last checked. But most of it is just nonsense that I'll never look at.
If only there was something like that already on your phone. Like, it's just the problem with the Samsung stuff. A lot of the times is that it's just a Samsung branded version of something that already exists. It's not like, hey, we just figured out healthcare on a phone. We're going to see how many steps you took. We're going to measure your heart rate when you put your finger over the stupid little light. Like, they're just piling stuff on. Maybe some of this stuff will stick. Look, here's the thing. There's all kinds of stupid stuff you could spend money on. And if you just look at speakers around your house, whatever, you could buy into an ecosystem. You could buy an Echo device from Amazon. You could buy a Google Home device from Google, obviously. You could buy a HomePod from Siri. You could kind of play the waiting game a little bit. Sonos is kind of adopting various assistants for their own speakers. And if you really like music, by the way, that's not such a bad option. I have $35 Chromecast dongles on a couple of speaker sets around the house, including here in my office. And the speakers we have out in the sunroom sound better than any Sonos. And they cost about a third the price. And then, the connectivity occurs via, something that costs nothing. That's my choice. I'm not actually saying everyone on earth should do that, but I am saying that there are these fringe decisions you can kind of make that make sense in the context of your lifestyle, like the Apple guys. Like I get it. I'm not doing that, but I get it. If I ever go to your house and I see one of these things, I'm going to use it as a toilet, but it's fine. That's the decision you make. The Samsung thing though, like you seriously, you have to be out of your mind to buy something like this.
There has to be a reason why people are buying it or will buy it. There has to be. I mean,
I don't think there is. I don't think there is.
I don't know.
I think the market for this thing is just as bad as the one for the Cortana speaker.
I have a big theory on these these devices, these Google Assistant, the Alexa and all that stuff. I have a theory that we're going to look back at one point and say, holy crap, I can't believe we put these things in our homes. It knows too much about me now. It hears my conversation. I think there's going to be some kind of compromise or some sort of shift where, I've said this before.
I think it's going to go in the opposite direction.
You think everything is going to be connected? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, your thoughts.
No doubt. It's whether you want it to be or not.
Yeah.
And your house is going to be like the Luddite, exception or whatever, and no one's going to want to buy it because it doesn't have like any of the stuff in it.
Listen, I'm in technology, and I don't really, and I'm not a conspiracy. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I'm not like a crazy conspiracy theorist where I'm thinking that they're listening to me and then they want to know. I do think there is something to be said about not, I guess, being heard all the time.
I 100% agree with that. But I actually also don't think that's what's happening. My sister's in town visiting. We had everyone over last night, and she asked about the speaker, and she said, "Oh, I would never put one of those things in my house." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "I don't want that thing listening to me all the time." I said, "Well, that's not what it's doing." And she said, "Well, I saw a story on the news, so that famous story where, I don't know, Alexa thought that they were ordering, I don't remember the exact, the incredible chain of events that had to lead to DEFCON 1 and nuclear attack on Russia or whatever it was."
Yeah.
Like, look, yeah, there are going to be these little things on the way, and there are going to be major things like privacy concerns and all that. And it takes a while for the law and maybe even common sense to kind of catch up with the advances. It's like the Jurassic Park thing, we can do this thing, but we never stop to think, should we do this thing? Which is probably not from Jurassic Park, but whatever. I just like Jeff Goldblum. The point is, this stuff.
You're the third person this is Jeff Goldblum up to me today, and I have no idea why this is happening.
I think it's because there's a giant statue of him that appeared in London.
That's the reason.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. I struggle with this kind of what's the line. This past year we've been working on integrating smart home technologies into our home where it makes sense. And one of the conversations we've had recently is it doesn't make sense in a lot of places. It really doesn't. We're not going to do smart doorbells and like put a camera out in front of the house. And we're not going to,
see, I've done that. I've put cameras in front.
Yeah, no, a lot of people. My sister has things. Actually, not the same sister, but a different sister has a camera, and it's the type of thing like we can. There's this kind of sliding scale people have. What's acceptable, what isn't acceptable, but right now, the ability to ask Siri or Cortana or whoever, what's the weather, what's the news, tell me a joke is whatever. It's not too much, but this is going to take what we're really going to come back and question someday is things like the keyboard and the mouse, and people are going to be like, what is this Spanish Inquisition tool that you used to input data into a computer? Like it's insanity. This thing was literally designed not to be efficient. That's the point of it. And we use it every day to type. And they're going to be like, why did you ever do that? I don't know. And part of the way we get off of this is this kind of ambient computing thing. The very nature of computing kind of changes. And instead of being like a thing that we sit in a room in front of a screen and do, it just becomes the thing that's in the background that is there all the time. And then we can get on with the point of life, which isn't to be like, do 12 hours of research to find out what the capital of Romania is because we don't have the internet, or whatever.
I have a rule at the bar with a couple of my friends where, and it's actually, no. Actually, well, kind of, right? Well, it's pretty interesting. So when I go to press, we've all agreed in like the Cheers group that we have there that whenever there's a question or a topic comes up and we don't know exactly, we will not pull out our smartphones to look it up.
Right.
And this is like a weird experiment we started about a year ago, and one of the guys that works with me, I'm sorry, not works with me, that goes, well, working with me. I mean, I guess so, right? We are working. Drinking is a job for some. So he was telling me, he goes, listen.
Well, Andrew, let me just correct that real quick. Drinking is a career for some.
Drinking is my career.
It's not a job. But anyway, yes.
Yeah. I need to do Casper reads at the bar at this point. That's how I got to pay the bills at the bar. Sure. So we were talking about this and said, listen, we have become so reliant on not putting in any thought. If we don't know the answer, you know what? Let's just look it up. We know the answer. If we tried a little bit, we know the answer. And I think we've become so reliant that we don't even have the patience for our brain to process something for 30 seconds.
This is what you're really describing is you're seeking a balance.
Yes,
because
please.
I actually find in social situations, it's often the best thing to do is to find out the answer so you can kind of move on, because the point isn't let's see who's smart and let's because we don't even have any way of verifying it, but that's beside the point. I've done my own version of this thing in many other areas, and like I've used this example in the past where we're driving around and my wife wants to use the map thing, and I'm like, no, I need to understand how to get to this place. Like I can't just dumbly follow the directions every time. I need to know how to get there. And it's a struggle because when you get something that's better and it's easier, obviously you want to use it all the time.
You want to use
but you lose something in the process. You lose something. You lose the ability to just to hold a direction in your head. It's kind of crazy. Like we are like domesticated cats. Actually, that's not a good example because they couldn't live out in the world. Like domesticated dogs are like whatever. Yeah. Like we could never exist in nature.
No, not at this point.
We'd be walking around looking for a cell signal, and some saber-toothed tiger would just kill us.
I went to Maine. I went to York Beach, which 2 weeks ago, which was I absolutely loved it. I've traveled very little in the New England area region, and I absolutely fell in love with Maine. I'm actually to the point that we're considering buying a place there for like a summer house. So we were going to the lighthouse.
Time there in the winter first.
I know, no. No, I don't want to be there in the winter. So we were going to take a walk to the lighthouse, and I could see where the lighthouse is. I could see it from my hotel. So we're trying to figure out like, okay, which way should we go? I'm like, Jess, let's just effing walk. If we walk to it, what difference does it make if we're going up the wrong street? We're getting closer. It doesn't. Right. There's no proper direction. Actually, there's a lighthouse. Let's go to it. And then we did.
The story I told a couple of weeks ago about my wife and I are sitting out in the backyard and look up the sky, and I'm like, there are no stars out, but there is something that looks like a star. It's really bright. You can see it in the blue sky. And I said, it's got to be a planet. I wonder what planet it is. My reaction to that was to pick up my phone and Google it, and I found out that I think it was Jupiter. But the thing I saw noted that actually there's a brighter planet in the sky, Neptune, sorry, and it's in the western sky. And from where we were sitting, so then I put down that's all I needed to hear. I knew it. So I said, let's go. Yeah. We have to get up and walk around the house because from where we're sitting, the house is west and it's blocking the sky. So we walked around the house, we looked, and sure enough, there it was, a bright thing up. And to me, that was the right balance. Like it was enough to understand. And then you learn something and it was kind of cool. And I was like, great. And I look over at my wife, and she's up there with her phone, and she's doing this thing, and she's got this AR thing going on with like Skyscanner or whatever it is. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she goes, that is Venus or Neptune. I'm sorry. Venus. I guess it would be Venus. Not Neptune.
Venus is the brightest. Yeah, Venus is the one
because it's closer to the sun. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
but Mars right now is.
I'm not Carl Sagan, people. Yeah, at the time it was late June, and Mars wasn't. Mars right now apparently is closer to Earth than it's been in 15 years. Anyway, she says that is Neptune. Sorry, Venus. And I said, I know it is. And she goes, no, but the app says it is. I'm like, Stephanie, I know it is because I know what direction west is. Like we're what are we like? What part of our brain are we giving up here? I don't need you to tell me that. I can see.
I can see it.
I know that that's what it is. But that's the thing. Like it's
that is the thing. I think we've.
It's a struggle for balance. I think
it's a struggle for balance, and it's a reliance. It's a reliance on technology. So to kind of move on from this, to talk about something else. I have no segue, by the way. I was trying to come up with a great segue for the next topic. I want to talk about Skype and people losing their minds, especially in the podcasting world. I cannot begin to tell you how many emails I've gotten over the last couple of days from podcasters. Okay, like me and you. From producers at major networks, engineers at major networks, from people that are freaking out and saying, hey, what's going to happen with the hardware that I use? What's going to happen with the software that I use? Is it going to be compatible with this audio interface or this video interface? I mean, I'm telling you right now, like I got an email from someone, a friend of mine, and he goes, dude, the subject line was, dude, WTF Skype. And he wrote, I have no idea if this is going to work with anything that we use, because I know that they're not using the Skype TX stuff. I should probably bleep the company's name that I just mentioned on the podcast. Okay. I don't think they're using Skype TX. I think they're just doing like a laptop, like for quick guests that come in. And I think they're freaking out a lot. And this is not the only network. There have been 2-3 other guys that I know that I see regularly, and they're asking me now for advice on how to kind of figure out a way to do it. And they've actually asked me if they could use vMix to do it, because they know that I use vMix Call now. With that said, some of the interesting improvements that they've put in are the recording feature that they're going to be implementing later this month.
Right.
That is good news for a lot.
So I thought where you were going with this is that Microsoft has just announced that they're going to abruptly end support for the classic version of Skype, which is the version I use because it works.
Yes. So let me backtrack. The reason why they're freaking out is because you can't use the older version. So
we have until September 1st to figure this out. It's weird. It's a new desktop app. It's like Skype 8. I believe it's built in Electron or something. Like, it's not built in the same code base as the classic Skype, but it's still sort of technically a desktop app. It's not the universal Windows platform app that you also get in Windows 10. I don't know why we need both of these things on Windows 10, but whatever.
So does this mean that the desktop app is, I mean, this is the desktop app. It's a replacement for the desktop app. It's not the original desktop app. There's a couple differences here also with the codec that they're using.
Well, I mean, just from a normal human being using an app standpoint, there are some major differences. For example, this new app is a single window only. So one of the first things I do when I install Skype normally is I turn it into multi-window mode. So every chat window, every video, whatever I'm doing is in its own window. Yeah. That way, if I'm having multiple conversations, one with Brad, one with Raphael, one with me, I can just do Alt-Tab between them. It's wonderful. So switching between them in the same window is terrible.
That's how it's been on the Mac for a while. It's always been one window. So if can I screen share? I wonder if I can. Would that break anything, John?
Sure.
I don't know if I can. Let me see. Forget it. I'm not even going to attempt it. But either way, so on the Mac, it's one box. So everything is in one thing. And it's kind of made everything a little jumbled. If you're doing like a file transfer and you're trying to open up an image and you're talking to someone, you've seen the video, and then you want to go back to typing to them, it's kind of wonky the way that it is. Have you read any anything about the video and audio improvements implemented in Skype 8?
No.
Because I was on a call yesterday and I was on mobile, so that's not a fair example. But
Right.
I definitely heard something different. Now, I don't know if they've gone over the Opus like they had said about 4 years ago that they were going to implement
Right.
Opus as the codec. I don't know. I haven't really spent a lot of time with Skype 8 on the PC side. Obviously, on the Mac side, I have, but I'm kind of afraid to start using it on production machines. But there are a lot of other pros, like the ability for broadcasters. And I know this is a very niche thing, but they have a feature to implement NDI.
NDI.
And John, do you want to pot your mic up and explain this a little bit? I wonder if he could do that.
So NDI is a basically network device interface from NewTek. It's open source. They let anybody use it that wants to use it. And I guess the Skype team worked with NewTek to implement NDI natively into Skype so that whenever you make a call and you can enable NDI now in Skype and have a video feed of NDI sent to whatever application you're using. So like we're using vMix. So I can enable NDI in Skype and have that video call, and whoever is in that video call sent over NDI to vMix. So like if it's you and Paul in a video call, I can get
one of
NDI
us is using Skype. Okay.
Yeah, so he would be able to do that.
NewTek, like the video toaster NewTek?
Yes, like the video toaster NewTek, not the finance company NewTek.
Right.
But I do think that's a very unique and interesting feature for a consumer device. And
consumer device
for Skype, right?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's consumer now, because you have a lot of gamers that are using stuff like XSplit and OBS to do streams. And they're using these applications that now support NDI. So it almost makes sense for them to have this included with
They
Skype.
almost have to have it.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting. So the recording feature is one, the NDI feature is another. I do want to spend some more time because I was very involved in the development of Skype, and I would speak to some of the developers over in London when I don't even know if they still have that team a couple of years ago. And Paul, we would go back and forth all the time with what we were finding out. But because we depended on Skype for our company, our brand, when they made a change, it impacted us, negative or positive. We went away from Skype to simplify things. And I mean, if this is better, obviously we could go back to Skype for a lot of things. But right now we're not even, I'm using a webcam and a browser, and I'm sending my video back to Queens from Manhattan. Paul is sending it back and it's all in one application, just funnels right in. So it makes life easy. But this is an interesting term for Skype. And one of the questions I got, Paul, and I have not seen other people ask this, is if we're going to have different tiers to Skype and if there might be a pay version of Skype now that they've implemented recording and DI support and maybe some other features.
Yeah, it's almost like what they need is a pro version for consumers that want to use it for game streaming or what, any kind of broadcasting. I mean, I could see it. I could see it. I mean, I sort of feel like the window's closing on them though, because there's so many other options now for this kind of stuff. And I don't know. I mean, they're
but are there a lot of options? I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? Even though we say that there are, but there's still
the mainstream uses of it. There are. I don't know. I just watched a Google Hangouts thing the other day. It was like a live stream of some kind. It was like guys from each of the major browser vendors. It was a guy from Microsoft, guy from Mozilla, a guy from Google, whatever. They were talking about the web, where it's at today. They were basically circle jerking each other. It was kind of weird to watch, but that thing like dropped out so many times. Like it was terrible. And it's very clear that there's still room for things that just work, and so maybe they can pull this off. But I mean, Skype has had such a rough history. I think people just get frustrated with it. And when I run into this, I ran into problems with 8.0. I had to go back. I'm only going to be able to do that now for the next month and a half or a little bit less. Eventually, they're just going to force it on me. And I hope it works because I don't know where else to turn at this point. I have to use
Yeah.
Skype. I mean, it's like a requirement for me. So
Yeah. I think it's for a
we'll see.
lot of people. I do think that do you ever get any kind of data on usage for, Skype if the usage is growing or if it's going down?
Yeah.
Because I tend to
not.
use it less and less.
Yep.
There's
So
only,
Skype
I mean,
okay.
sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that it's notable.
By the way, this is a great example. Why Skype is better than what we were using to an extent. There is weird latency between us.
Yeah. Yep. It's like making an iPhone call in 2007, or a World War I field phone call in 1943. One of the more notable things, Microsoft has this page somewhere online called Microsoft by the Numbers. And every once in a while, someone will look at it and say, hey, look, this number went up, whatever it is. And one of the interesting things about the Skype numbers, it's never gone up. In fact, they got rid of it. And the suspicion is that the Skype user base has actually fallen in recent years. And I believe the high was something like 300 million active users, or however they measured it. I'm going to guess and say it hasn't improved.
Yeah, I would say that they had a great opportunity with Windows and I mean, how many times did we say Skype should be the communication tool on? I mean, now obviously it is, but still kind of
spent a lot of time changing architectures. I don't know. They're killing the brand and business. Obviously, they're going to Microsoft Teams now for enterprise users and getting rid of Skype for Business. I don't know. It's the same stuff, by the way. It's still same back end.
Yeah. I do want to talk about one more subject, and I was considering saving it for the Patreon show, but instead, what I'm going to do, John, is take this. We'll do it with the show, but we'll also edit it and put it on Patreon and maybe put it on YouTube as well, because this is something that I've really gone into the last couple of weeks. And I bought this Raspberry Pi and I built a little, gaming system about 8 months ago, something like that. And I kind of forgot about it. I got busy, but I had some time. My wife was away, and I had some time to kind of, as I misspoke and said, fiddle with my Raspberry Pi. And I went down this rabbit hole on YouTube of just communities around the images that people are creating.
Yep.
And this image is better than that image, the top 10 images of February for the Raspberry Pi. So what I did, I ordered all the, a bunch of like 64 gig little SD cards and 32 gig ones. I found them for cheap. And I started, just putting different versions of these images. Now, obviously, this is experimental, and that's why I'm using it. And I'm not telling anybody to go and download software like that with games and just disclaimer. So essentially, I found out that, these guys are putting in a lot of work to get these things to work well. And I found one. So I built one just for like every game and every console, and that's fine. There's 5,000 different ways to play Nintendo games. But my biggest thing has always been, I've been an arcade fan. I grew up in an arcade essentially. And I want to play all these like arcade games like Metal Slug or and these beat 'em up games. And I found ROMs that have been made, it's the ROMs, it's the emulators, and it's the image that's combined into essentially every arcade game you could ever imagine for the last, 30 years on this thing. And I'm thinking, my God, how come we haven't seen, like Capcom has this humongous archive of arcade games that they probably have like 300-400 games. I'm willing to bet that with the success of Nintendo, with their re-release of the NES Classic and the Super Nintendo, I anticipate a lot of people to make these little consoles now. This is where we're going to go, where you're going to get, during a holiday season, Capcom is going to put out a mini console of all their top games, and Konami's going to put it out, or Data East is going to put it. I mean, I don't even know if Data East is still around, but whoever owns that license may do it. Dude, I'm telling you, it's so much fun to go back and play some of these games.
So, I think there is a market for kind of nostalgia. This is going to sound like it's not related at all, but one of the things that's been fascinating to me over the past 3 to 6 months, and then I literally just saw a big article about this very topic, was suddenly there's a lot of Stephen King stuff going on, right?
Interesting.
Everything Stephen King has ever written is suddenly being turned into a TV series, a miniseries, a movie, whatever. Why is this? This guy's been around for 40 years plus. He's probably written almost 100 books now, whatever it is. Why the sudden interest? And the theory of, I had commented on this to my wife, and then I read this article today, and the theory is the people who grew up on Stephen King are now the people with the most money, and they want to see the things from their youth done right. So they made some crappy movie about whatever it was in the 1980s. Well, let's do it again, but we're going to do it big budget. And it's going to be awesome now, and we're going to pay to see that. And we're going to buy it on Blu-ray or whatever. And there's a market for that stuff. And I think to kind of put it into the thing you're talking about, that same effect can apply. And so you see things like Nintendo put out the retro console briefly.
Yeah,
sold through the roof. They took it away for some reason. They're weird, but
and it came back. They re-released it. Yeah.
Atari's coming out with a retro console this year, right? And it's going to have some modern features too, and they keep changing what it's going to be, and who knows, it might be a nightmare. But the idea is we're going to play off this brand we have, not just the brand, but we're going to release this thing that looks like the wood style console that we had back in 1977.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
Yeah, it's neat looking. The guys behind Intellivision are going to put out their own little retro console too. But same thing. All the games ever made, plus a bunch that were never released, probably costing $100 to be a little thing you can plug in your TV. And if you're into like Intellivision games, like I happen to have been, I'm sure Coleco or whoever owns that stuff will do the same thing for ColecoVision. There's a market. There's kind of a market for that. Like, is this going to outsell Call of Duty? No, but there is a market for it, right? The thing you're describing, in many ways, especially with the Raspberry Pi or other devices like that, or emulators, whatever, is kind of always been there. We've had ROMs and emulators and things on PCs and other devices for a long, long time. But there's a cool intersection there of what I'll call like the makers market. People who like building things and putting little computers together in a way that it's either something nostalgic because it used to be like this back in the day, or for a lot of people, it's just new because everything is handed to them in a beautiful Apple box today. It's sealed. You can't get inside of it. It's just all works. And there's kind of that hipster style nostalgia, which is like nostalgia for something you never actually experienced, where you want to go back and kind of like, this is the way things used to be. Like I joked earlier about, I'm going to program an Amiga Basic or whatever, which I'm not actually going to do. But I have often looked at the Raspberry Pi and thought to myself, if this thing was a little more powerful, like 2 or 4 gigabytes of RAM or something, like you could make a credible computer out of this thing. Like a credible computer.
Absolutely.
And,
I mean, the things that I'm able to do on that thing, it's amazing.
It really, it harkens back to, I wasn't around for homebrew stuff like in the 70s, but the early days of computers where you had things like the Commodore 64 and the Atari 800 and TI 99.4A and all those kinds of things. And it was kind of a, it wasn't the super professional Hollywood beating, market for PCs we have today or for games or whatever, but it was fun. And there was kind of I had a game on the Commodore 64, it came on a cassette tape, and you could hit whatever the, control break or whatever it was. And the basic source code came up and you could edit it. And amazing. I used to go in and, I'd add, gold or whatever. It was like a kind of like a dungeon thing. You can't control break an iPhone game and start screwing with the source code. It's not the same. So I think there's a big place for this stuff. And it's not like Call of Duty sized, but there's a huge market for this stuff. There are Raspberry Pi enthusiasts. There are, I'm sure, conferences and local meetups and all kinds of websites and forums and things. And people trade, like you said, different images of things. Like there are different ways you could like emulate an Amiga on this thing, which is something I've tried to do. Some guy will figure out some way to do something more efficiently, whatever it is. Like there is a vibrant thing going on there, and it is part of that thing it's kind of missing from personal computing today.
So something interesting.
DIY part of it.
Yeah, the DIY Pi. That's the next Raspberry Pi.
The DIY Pi.
Yeah, the DIY stuff is something that I grew up on, but there's going to be my kids are never going to tear stuff apart like we did. It's too expensive to tear apart. I went to Radio Shack and I got that stupid kit with the board, and that's how I learned how to do stuff. I had a Tandy computer, and when it got old, I begged my parents to go buy a RAM. They don't know how to install memory, and I
We
had
used
to learn and do it. I was, 11,
mechanical
12 years
cars
old, and
with
I'm learning.
carburetors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
now
something's
you
been
just
lost.
throw it out. You say it's old and it's
Right.
done.
Right. Yep.
I do think
there
there's
are
something
benefits to
interesting
it.
about it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, but I understand your attraction to this. I mean, I think a lot of people are likewise attracted to this kind of thing. It may not be exactly the same thing. Like, you had whatever experiences you had growing up, and you're like, oh, the ability to play Capcom games or whatever is particularly appealing to you. There might be someone, because of wherever they were in life, and the Nintendo 64 came out, and that's all they care about. Like, I want to play Skyfox, I want to, whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's healthy too. If it's literally nostalgic. I mean, sometimes it's interesting just to go back and be like, oh yeah, like I brought up, the Amiga emulator, and there are different versions of the operating system, and you kind of click around and you're like, yeah, this is like a well-oiled memory. Like I probably couldn't have come up with an image in my head of exactly what it looked like until I saw it again. I was like, yep, there it is. That's it. I remember that. Now yes, it's like this is a thing lodged in the back of my brain.
I think it's very interesting that we could do this. And by the way, I haven't really dived into this stuff that deep, but like one of the images that I got had DS and had PlayStation and had Neo Geo, and I mean, and Dreamcast. I mean, right now these things are able to do Dreamcast games. Oh, by the way, you know what I did order? I did order an HDMI converter for my Dreamcast, and it looks magnificent. I told you that. Right. It looks unbelievable.
That's an important thing too. The ability to put it on a modern display, is humongous. This even like I in my own sort of more recent experience with video games or whatever, one of the big things in Call of Duty is every year they'll come out with these new map packs, and not every single time, but usually there'll be at least 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever classic maps that have been reimagined for the new game. Sometimes they actually screw with it a little bit, which I don't like. Sometimes they try to faithfully reproduce it. And so the most recent game, there was a Paris map, whatever. So I recently just went back to, I think it was Modern Warfare 3 it was in, and I played the original level online. And when I saw the remake, I was like, this is amazing. I remember all the places. It's same little nooks and crannies. It was really crazy. And then I went back and looked at the original, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, there were actually major differences here. Like, and it doesn't matter what they are, but there's something to be said for the original, in all things. Yeah, and I think the ability to go back and play that game as it really was is something. There's something to be said for preserving it too. There are going to be issues around privacy and everything, but the ability, like, in other words, someone could remake Mario, the original Super Mario Brothers, put it on the PC, and it would probably be perfect, relatively speaking. But there's something to be said for the actual game, like the real one.
Well, you know what they're doing now? Like now, you could have different shaders, right? Like, so you could put scan lines on it to make it look more, and you could warp the screen a little so it looks like the old tube TVs. I think that's, like for me, I kind of want it to look better, but I get people wanting it to look like the original. Yep. I think that's interesting for a lot of people, but the fact that we could do all this stuff is unbelievable.
No, it's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah. No, I think tech nostalgia is a thing. We have been. I was of the first generation, I guess, basically that grew up with like video game consoles. To my dad, who desperately wanted to play the Intellivision we got that one Christmas, and was never going to be coordinated enough to make it happen. It was very frustrating to him. But I grew up playing video games. I played video games with my son as he grew up. And I play video games basically every day with people who are probably 1/3 my age. And it's a different scenario. Like it's a different world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of cool. It's natural that we would, just like the people who grew up in the 50s and maybe were the first generation of teenagers to be able to buy cars of their own was probably a huge, well, I'm sure it was, obviously was a huge thing that changed society. For us, it was video games. So obviously we're all sitting on our ass in some way, but we're doing it in front of a screen.
Let's see what the next move is. But we are out of time. This was fun. For all things Paul, go to Thurrott.com. Anything coming up?
On Thurrott.com?
Yeah. Anything
I can't really talk about anything specific, but I have the trip coming up, so
Yeah,
I'm going to be writing a lot about travel tech and
so how are we doing shows? Should I find a replacement or are you available?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to make myself available. The only issue is next week we're actually doing our side trip to Berlin, and it's literally like during the week. Like I'm not going to be able to do a podcast next week.
Okay. So I may do it with Brad, or I'll ask Brad or Mary Jo or John Prosser.
But I'm going to try to make it work the next 2 weeks after that.
Okay.
We're not going anywhere else. I mean, that I'm aware of. So
yeah.
There should be some day in there we can make it work.
I'm also going to, over the next couple of weeks, start doing, some car technology, because now I'm going to finally I'm going to have an Apple CarPlay and the Google, what is the Google one called? Google Auto?
And Android Auto, isn't it?
Android Auto. Yeah. So now my car has both of them. So I want to start playing around with that and kind of learning. I think it's amazing that it's 2018 and both of them have been out for years, right. And this is the first car that has it for me. I think that's fascinating.
But I mean, they've both done a really good job of getting their stuff out to all of the manufacturers and most of the models. So now it's a necessity.
Like yeah,
you'd have to go out of your way not to be able to get it. At least
listen, everything from a Hyundai, to a Mercedes. I don't know. I don't know if Mercedes has it, but to a Volvo, everybody has it now. All right, guys, that's it for this week. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Zarin. You can follow Paul at The Rot. We do the show each and every week. You could also fund us by going to patreon.com/whatthetech. We accept all your monies. $1, $2, $3, whatever you want to give us. Send it my way. I need another hat. I had no hairspray. So this is why my hair looks like this, by the way. Someone's going to send a message saying, why are you wearing a hat backwards? It's going to be Paul Thurrott yelling at me while I'm wearing a baseball cap.
You look like a YouTuber.
Hey, guys.
You're going to be like, hey, yo.
Hey, guys, this is Andrew Zarin, and today I'm going to put a Raspberry Pi in my KitchenAid mixer. That's going to be my next video. All right, guys, that's it for this week. We'll see you later.